Welcome to RankLens. Today, we count down the top 10 most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. When Earth shakes, it shakes with unimaginable force. We measure this power with a single number, magnitude, and some of humanity's most violent moments have registered off the charts. Today, we're counting down the 10 most powerful earthquakes ever recorded by modern instruments, events that fundamentally altered our planet and changed countless lives. Some killed tens of thousands, others struck in empty wilderness. All of them unleashed forces that scientists are still studying today. Get ready. The story you're about to hear will reshape how you think about Earth's power. At number 10, we start with a scar. The Earth reopened. Just 3 months after the catastrophic 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake, the same fault ruptured again. The 2005 Nias Simeulue earthquake in Sumatra, measuring a devastating 8.6 on the magnitude scale. The ground convulsed with almost inconceivable force. On Nias Island, the destruction was severe. Thousands of buildings collapsed instantly, burying families and destroying communities. The quake's energy seemed endless, a reminder that some faults never truly stop. Yet nearby, Simeulue Island, sitting closest to the epicenter itself, suffered remarkably few deaths. Why? The islanders had learned something precious from the 2004 catastrophe just months before. They understood the ocean's warning signs. When the tsunami came, they were ready. Knowledge saved lives. At number 9, we travel far inland. The 1950 Assam earthquake in the collision zone between India and Tibet struck with 8.6 magnitude, one of the strongest intracontinental earthquakes ever measured with modern seismographs. This wasn't a coastal fault. It was the very collision of two continents, the Indian subcontinent ramming relentlessly beneath the Eurasian plate. The shaking triggered a cascade of disasters. Massive landslides tore through the terrain, and these walls of rock dammed up mountain rivers, creating natural barriers where water pooled dangerously behind stone and earth. For a time, the dam held. But dams fail. When those natural barriers eventually burst, the water rushed down the valleys in devastating floods, carrying everything before it. Thousands died, not from the quake itself, but from the second wave of destruction it unleashed. At number 8, we head to one of Earth's most violent corners. The 1965 Rat Islands earthquake in Alaska's Aleutian Chain released a staggering 8.7 magnitude of energy. The epicenter lay in one of the most remote regions on the planet, a place where few humans had ever set foot. This fault line, the Aleutian megathrust, is a powerhouse of planetary destruction, responsible for some of Earth's most powerful earthquakes. The quake's magnitude was staggering. The energy released could have leveled cities. But the remote, sparse population meant that despite the earthquake's absolutely enormous force, casualties were minimal. It's a sobering reminder. The same magnitude in a populated zone would be catastrophic. Geography, in this case, was mercy. At number 7, we face an earthquake so powerful it altered the planet itself. The 2010 Maule earthquake in Chile struck at 8.8 magnitude along a subduction zone with a storied history of extreme seismic violence, a fault responsible for some of Earth's most powerful earthquakes. The Maule quake did something almost incomprehensible. It shifted Earth's axis. The tremor was powerful enough to shorten each day by a few microseconds, a measurable change to our planet's spin. The shaking lasted 90 seconds of almost endless violence. That's an eternity when the ground beneath you is heaving and splitting. When it finally stopped, the Chilean coastline had been permanently thrust seaward, entire sections of land displaced meters into the Pacific by the immense force of continental collision. The earthquake didn't just destroy, it reshaped the map. At number 6, we travel to South America's Pacific coast, where nature unleashed absolute devastation. The 1906 Ecuador-Colombia earthquake, striking at 8.8 magnitude, remains one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded along South America's western edge. This was no isolated event. It struck a subduction zone notorious for producing some of Earth's largest earthquakes. But the damage didn't stay local. The quake generated a tsunami of tremendous power that raced across the entire Pacific Basin, crossing thousands of miles of open ocean. It struck Hawaii with devastating force. It reached Japan, crossing nearly the entire width of the Pacific. A single quake on one coast sent killer waves spiraling across the world's largest ocean. The 1906 Ecuador-Colombia earthquake demonstrated that subduction zones are not just regional hazards. They are planetary forces capable of threatening distant shores thousands of miles away. At number 5, we've reached the truly monumental earthquakes. The 1952 Kamchatka earthquake in Russia struck with 9.0 magnitude. We are now in the realm of the most powerful forces Earth can generate. This epicenter lay on the Kamchatka subduction zone, one of the most seismically active regions on our entire planet, where the Pacific Plate plunges relentlessly beneath the Eurasian Plate. The quake's power was so immense, it generated a Pacific-wide tsunami. Waves raced across the ocean and struck Hawaii with significant, devastating force, thousands of miles from the epicenter. Yet remarkably, the death toll remained relatively modest. Why? The quake struck in one of Earth's most remote, sparsely populated regions. The Kamchatka Peninsula had few settlements to destroy. Here was an earthquake of absolutely colossal power confined to a place where almost no one lived. Luck and geography kept the casualty count low, but the ocean's rage reached across an entire ocean basin. At number 4, we encounter one of the most documented and consequential earthquakes in modern history. The 2011 Tōhoku earthquake struck Japan at 9.1 magnitude, the most powerful earthquake ever instrumentally recorded in Japan's entire recorded seismic history. This was a megathrust quake of unimaginable violence, and Japan, already a nation intimately familiar with earthquakes, had never experienced anything like it. The earthquake itself was only the beginning. The quake triggered a tsunami of catastrophic proportions, and those waves overwhelmed the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. 3 reactor meltdowns unfolded in real time as cooling systems failed and fuel cores were exposed. It became the world's worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. Yet the physical destruction was equally profound. The earthquake was so powerful it permanently shifted Honshu, Japan's main island, several meters to the east. An entire landmass had moved. Tōhoku was an earthquake that changed nations and redrew maps. At number 3, we reach an earthquake that reshaped modern disaster history. The 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake struck Sumatra at 9.1 magnitude, triggering the deadliest tsunami in recorded history. The destruction was almost incomprehensible in scale. The resulting tsunami raced across the Indian Ocean and struck 14 countries across 3 continents. The death toll, roughly 230,000 people. In a single day, across a single ocean, one earthquake's tsunami created a modern catastrophe record, a tragedy that redefined how the world thought about natural disaster. But the earthquake's reach extended far beyond its visible destruction. The shaking lasted nearly 10 minutes, an eternity when the ground is splitting beneath you. The released energy was so staggering, so beyond human comprehension, that the entire planet vibrated. Seismographs around the world, in distant continents, thousands of miles away, detected the tremors for weeks afterward. This single earthquake announced itself to the entire Earth. At number 2, we encounter the most violent earthquake in North American history. The 1964 Good Friday earthquake struck Alaska at 9.2 magnitude, the most powerful earthquake ever instrumentally recorded anywhere in North America. This wasn't just a regional event, it was a tectonic convulsion of extraordinary proportions. The ground shook with unrelenting violence for roughly 4 minutes. 4 minutes might not sound long, but imagine the earth heaving and splitting beneath your feet for that duration. An eternity of destruction. Massive ground deformation rippled across southern Alaska, reshaping the terrain with every second of shaking. But the destruction didn't stay at Alaska's shores. The quake generated a powerful tsunami that raced south across the Pacific, crossing hundreds of miles of open ocean. The tsunami struck Crescent City, California, a small coastal town far from the epicenter, and the waves caused significant damage. One earthquake in Alaska reached south to California, demonstrating once again that seismic forces ignore political boundaries. And at number 1, we arrive at the strongest earthquake ever recorded by instruments anywhere on our planet. The 1960 Valdivia earthquake in Chile struck at 9.5 magnitude, a number that stands alone in seismic history. Scientists who study earthquake power say they are unlikely to ever record a magnitude higher. This was the absolute upper limit of tectonic violence our planet can generate. The ground shook for approximately 10 minutes, a seemingly impossible duration of continuous devastating motion. Most earthquakes last seconds. This one lasted for a full 10 minutes of relentless, violent shaking that reshaped entire regions. But again, the earthquake's impact transcended its source. The tsunami crossed the entire Pacific Basin, the world's largest ocean, carrying destruction across thousands of miles. People in Japan, on the opposite side of the Pacific, were killed by waves triggered by this single Chilean earthquake. The 1960 Valdivia earthquake remains the most powerful seismic event ever measured by human instruments. It is the ceiling of earthquake power. These 10 earthquakes reveal Earth's terrible power and the geography of risk. Most struck subduction zones, places where one plate drives relentlessly beneath another, accumulating unimaginable stress over centuries before releasing it all in minutes of catastrophic violence. The pattern is clear. Magnitude tends to cluster in these collision zones, particularly around the Pacific Ring of Fire. Yet the ranking also reveals an unsettling truth. Proximity to population centers determines tragedy. The deadliest earthquakes aren't always the largest. The 2004 Indian Ocean quake killed far more people than many others on this list, simply because it struck where millions lived. We cannot control earthquakes, but we can understand them. We can build smarter. We can prepare better. And we can hope that the next time the Earth shakes with terrible power, we'll be ready. And that's the top 10 most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. If you enjoyed this countdown, subscribe to RankLens for more.